Hey guys, it's Mr. Tiffany here, and today we're going to be going over the sliding compound miter saw. That's one of the first saws you're going to use initially in your projects, seeing as you're beginners, and it's one of the simplest, and you can do a lot of different things with it, so it's probably the best to start off with. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so today we're going to be going over the parts, the uses, and the basic operation of the sliding compound miter saw. So first off, let's talk about a few different parts of the saw. And why it's important. Allowing or knowing the different parts of the saw allows you to report any broken parts to me and easily know what they are. It's necessary for when you need to adjust the parts of the saw, and if I want you to do something to it, then you'll know exactly what needs to be done, and we won't have to waste time explaining it. And it also allows for easy instruction and safe operation of the saw to save us time and to make sure that you guys are always going to use it in a safe and efficient manner. So let's go ahead and go over a few different parts of the saw. Here, this bag that says Makita is connected to a spout, which has a dust port. Sometimes they'll have the bags like this one to collect all the different dust, or they'll have a ventilation system to do it. Here, we're going to have the handle and trigger where you obviously grip and use the trigger to activate the blade in order to cut your stock. We also have a blade guard to make sure that no long clothing that you shouldn't have on, but we'll go over that later, or your hands or your arms will hit the blade when it's in use or not in use. Obviously, we have the blade to cut your stock. Down here, we have the miter lock handle to lock in a certain angle when you're making a miter cut. Here, we have the miter gauge to determine what angle your cut's going to be when you're creating a miter cut. Down here, we have the miter table. This is also commonly referred to as just the table, but it is where you make miter cuts, so it's also sometimes referred to as a miter table. Up here, we have the slide rails, and those just allow the blade to move back and forth in order to cut pieces of stock with a bigger width than the diameter of the blade. And last but certainly not least, we have the fence that you can securely put your stock against in order to make sure it doesn't move while being cut. Okay, so next I'm going to have you guys go ahead and pause this video and go to this particular video. The link to it should be in your emails. It's a great instructor, so what you're going to go ahead and do is, again, pause this video, take the time to watch his video. You're going to stop it at 7 minutes and 30 seconds because after that point, he's simply giving instructions specific to his class and they're not going to pertain to us. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a second to pause the video and watch that now. Okay, so now that you guys are back and you've watched his video, we're going to go ahead and go over a few different things that this instructor maybe didn't touch on and probably should have, and some specific things that I will have you guys do in my classroom. All right, so what he didn't go over. First, he didn't talk about how to properly hold a board against the fence and table. Now, I have a specific way of doing this. I have the ducky. What I mean by the ducky is you're going to use your thumb to push the edge of the board into the fence while you use your four fingers to push down on the board into the table. This ensures that you get the edge of the board directly in the edge of the fence and the table, so that way it doesn't slip and move around. It also keeps your thumb safe because you're not sticking it along the length of the board and risk being too close and cutting it off. He also didn't use the proper names for a certain type of cut. He talked about a bevel where you adjust the blade to make it not perpendicular to the table, but rather at an angle. Along with that, he talked about a miter. Now, this is one he did actually mention the name of. However, he didn't mention that it could be used in conjunction, or what makes it a miter. What makes a miter is where you keep the blade perpendicular to the table, however you adjust the angle to not be perpendicular to the fence. This allows you to cut a certain angle at the end of the board, which is great for things such as picture frames, and the finish around a table is usually what I use it for. And then finally, you've got a compound miter cut, which is a combination of the two. Seeing as how you're beginners, this is a cut that you generally won't have to make simply because it comes in advance like cabinetry and whatnot. But it is simple and a good skill to know in case you feel like you may need it for one of your projects later on. Here's some more of what he didn't go over. He also didn't talk about how to how to cut rough and warp stock safely. But because this isn't something you guys will generally do, due to the fact that most of the wood you get will already be planed and jointed, I will only demonstrate this when the time arises. It's fairly simple, so usually I will just stop class, pull you guys aside, and give a quick demonstration, and then make sure you guys get my attention before you ever have to do it yourself. It's fairly simple, but I'd rather just explain that in person, so when that needs to happen, it will. He also didn't talk about safety equipment. When using a sliding compound miter saw, because there are chips and occasionally the small chunk that will fly off, it's important to always wear safety glasses. But you guys know, from the moment you walk in the door to the moment you leave, you should always have safety glasses on anyway, so that shouldn't be a problem. Now, with hearing protection, you guys know that unless you're using in a tool an extended amount, I usually don't require hearing protection. If you're just making one simple cut on the sliding compound miter saw, I generally won't ask you to wear earmuffs. However, if you're using it continuously, say more than 5 minutes, maybe to cut out the different pieces of a cutting board, I'm going to have you guys wear earmuffs just to so you're not going to class with your ears ringing. Finally, he didn't talk about crossing your arm under the blade when making a cut. He kind of showed this when making a miter cut, but it's not something he really demonstrated a whole lot, and I'm going to demonstrate in class. You simply don't want to be just using maybe your right hand to hold on the left side of the tool while using your left hand to plunge and cut. If you are left-handed, there are ways around it, and I'll show you guys those later. So to wrap up, make sure you complete the Google form that I've also shared with you in addition to that video. It is labeled Sliding Compound Miter Saw Safety Test. You must get a passing grade on this to attempt your proficiency test in class tomorrow. And if this is not completed, you will be expected to complete it in class on one of the computers, either in the classroom or up in the library. But if that's the case, you guys are going to lose half your daily points. And if that doesn't get completed in class, you would lose all daily points. So again, be ready to complete that proficiency test tomorrow. Even if you don't have to use the sliding compound miter saw for your project tomorrow, I will have you guys use it after everyone else that needs to use it has. That way I can make sure you're all checked off. Okay guys, well that's about it for this. So make sure you get your Google form in, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.